Okay, now we're starting over. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really fun to see in the chat. So we have people from all over the United States and some people from around different parts of the world coming in. Welcome. We started these Zooms in October of 2024 with these guys. They were our first presenters. And since then, every month or so, we've had these really awesome Zoom trainings with all different kinds of topics on how to add friction to rappel. And this is our second Whitewater topic. And based on the preview, it's going to be really cool. The graphs they did for this, I'm really looking forward to seeing it all put together because they are fantastic presenters. They really know what they're talking about. Brent Roth and Andrew Humphreys, they're what we would call, and I would call, whitewater experts on canyoneering. And it's nice to learn from people that have been doing it for a long time. So thank you again. My name is Kim. I'm a board member of the Coalition of American Canyoneers. It's absolutely free to join, which makes it awesome. We have such a nice outreach of people, and joining gives us good numbers to go to land managers and talk with them about access and issues they might have. And when you buy a shirt or make any sort of donation, since it is free, it directly goes right into access into where the land managers need it and to projects to keep our canyons clean and open. So thank you for being a part of that. And I'm going to have you guys turn it over to Andrew and Brent without further ado.
Thanks, Cam. Just want to confirm everybody can hear me. I'm not speaking on mute. Yeah, okay, great. Cool. Yeah, thanks for having us back. I know Brent and I are both very excited to come back and keep talking about these topics that we're very passionate about. So yeah, let me go. Can you spotlight us, Cam? Go ahead and spotlight Brent and I. See if we pop up. Oh, look at that.
There can only be one spotlight, so I'll just,
What?
when you guys talk,
I
change
thought we
topics,
I thought we
I'll move
managed
the
to do that
spotlight.
both last time. Okay, well then I guess it's just gonna be my mug up here then. Okay. Oh, look at that. Look at that. All right, now I got Brent spotlighted as well. All right, guys. So, to kick us off, here's what I want everybody to do in this room. I want you guys to close your eyes. Yeah. I want you to go back to your very first rappel in a canyon. Like, can you see it? Can you see the waterfall? Do you remember what you felt the first time you were rappelling? Was your heart racing? Were did you have a death grip on the rope? Were you nervous, excited? Like, how did you feel when you were going down? Did you feel alone, like unsure? Like, what was going through your head as you were rappelling? So take a moment, just kind of remember that. And now I'm gonna have you guys shift gears. Yeah. I want you to close your eyes again. Okay. And now I want you to imagine another first in a canyon. This time, can you picture the very first pool you ever swam across? Do you guys know where you were? I would venture to say the majority of the people in this room cannot remember the first pool they ever swam across in a canyon. And, why is this? Like, honestly, it's just not that eventful, right? But the that's what Brent and I are going to talk about. Yeah. We're going to talk about that swimming piece because uh, statistically, you are more likely to have a really bad incident swimming across that pool than you were to actually do your first rappel. Um, don't get me wrong, rappelling is very dangerous. We just can't seem to remember that pool we were swimming across because we didn't really perceive it as dangerous. So, Brent, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about risk here.
Yeah, so what is risk? If you've been doing any outdoor activities or education for a few years, this topic often comes up with what is risk. I did a lot of time in the military. We talk about risk assessment, and there's a lot of numbers and the formulas and all this stuff that you can come up with to define risk. The problem is that isn't a very useful tool on day-to-day decisions and what we do, particularly in canyons. So I like this definition of risk. It's less about getting a precise number and more about developing a comprehensive understanding to make informed decisions. It's like, do I understand the risk? Can I identify these things? Do I have knowledge and understanding of the environment so I can make a better decision by therefore removing risk. So that's what the slideshow is about, is that we're just going to be touching into a little bit of understanding the environment, understanding what we're doing so we can potentially reduce the risk. We're not going to, don't expect anybody to walk away with that skill in mind or in hand or sell you that next piece of kit that's going to solve your problem. That's not what this is. So one of the easy ways that in the what I do recreational swiftwater training, and I've been bringing this more and more into the canyon trainings I do, we talk about acceptable level of risk, ALR, and what's your ALR? So it's individually based, and it really breaks down to can I and should I? These two questions of when I'm about to do something, whether it's a rescue or whatever decision, or I look at a potential hazard or something that I'm afraid of. Comes down to can I? Do I have the skills? Do I have the ability? But then also looking at do I have the right team? And do I recognize the hazards? If any of these questions are no, then maybe I shouldn't be engaging in whatever it is I'm about to be doing, right? And then should I? So just because you can doesn't mean you should. Does the risk outweigh the cost? What could go wrong? Again, this is where this knowledge and environment comes in quite a bit. If I don't recognize or don't know what could possibly go wrong, then maybe I shouldn't be engaging or making the decision about what I'm about to do. And then importantly, how will it affect my team? Are my decisions in line with what the team's goals are for the day? And then is there a plan? So kind of what could go wrong? Is there a plan? Do I have a way of getting myself out of any situation? So this is a really good in the moment useful tool of just say, hey, can I do this? Should I do this? And don't forget your teammates come into this decision making. Next. So I kind of already tapped on this one, the perceived risk versus actual risk. So a lot of decisions we make are based off perceived risk. So we see things that we don't understand, which then often causes us to be afraid of them. And so then we make a decision based on the perceived fear that can often lead to a higher consequence in the actual risk. Good example is this: watching somebody rappel near a waterfall for the first time and start walking off their fall line. And the moment they slip, they're going to swing into the hazard that they were trying to avoid, rather than just maintaining the fall line and engaging in the water flow that really may not be an issue at all, but it was a perceived risk to that person. So they have this innate fear. So it's based on fear, personal experience. The one at the bottom of that list I really like is cognitive bias. So sometimes we do things just because we see other people do them. Sometimes we do things because we think this is the right thing to do or what I'm supposed to do. This is all cognitive biases, which leads us to make poor decisions. Actual risk is based on data, physics, and environmental conditions, and the known capabilities of your gear and yourself and your team. Right? That's what I really want to know and look at. So moving into the next slide. Oh, Andrew, you got something?
Yeah, no, I would just say, it's very easy for us to kind of talk about this stuff, but and give you some theory behind it. But Brent and I both really believe in the power of storytelling. So part of what we're going to do today is show you some scenarios or some things that we can see in a canyon. So I'm going to drop right into this slide and let you kind of watch this situation unfold. So in case you guys missed that, we'll watch one more time. Somebody gets swept over the edge. If you can see him right at the edge there. And that is not a slide in general. Yeah. Until it got done there. So what were we seeing there? Yeah. And those of us who spend a lot of time in a canyon will see this very edge as what I like to call the suction zone. That there is a spot as you get closer to the lip of that waterfall that all of a sudden the water starts to sort of pull you over it, and it only gets stronger the further you get over that waterfall. This is caused by the Bernoulli principle. It is something that you have to be highly aware of as you get into more aquatic canyons, and as the aquatic increases, this only gets stronger. These suction zones. Now, that's not to say that every suction zone is dangerous, right? So if we assume, water flow is mostly constant in the canyon, right? There's a certain amount of water that's going down. It's unless there's a flood, it's not really going up or decreasing. The difference though with that constant flow is the shape of the canyon. And so the more constricted through that canyon, or the more constricted on that drop, the stronger that suction's going to be. Whereas if you have, this big wide lip with just a little bit of water going over it, there's suction there, but it's just tiny. Unless you're an ant, you don't really need to be worrying about it. You could just stand up. So, what would we like to see in terms of mitigating this suction zone? The first thing is you need to anticipate that it's there. So you want to try to estimate that depth, thinking about how much water flow is going through the canyon, going through that constriction. How deep do we actually think it is at that lip? Because the deeper it is, that's going to be the more suction that we need to be worried about. What we see with this person sitting on the edge is that they've got their foot down on the rock. This is really important. You need to make contact early. If you watch that video again that I just showed you, you'll notice the feet go over first, and you didn't quite make contact with the rock early on. So getting contact with that is going to help keep you from getting pulled over. As well, you want to reduce your surface area. You need to stand up. The more surface area you have, the more that water can begin to interact with your body, right? And then as well, this one I see way too often, unfortunately, is your bag. A lot of people will swim with their bag in front of them, and your bag can easily get into that suction zone. And then if you decide to hold on to it, or your bag's holding on to you, you can get pulled over just as easily. Brent, I'll pass it back to you there.
Yeah. So another, hydraulic hazard, if you call it, or feature, is like to say, is trap pools. And looking at what happens in trap pools. So going into the next slide, you can see we broke it down into like two causes of why a trap pool exists. One of the primary ones is surface current. And surface current is water comes over the waterfall, it hits the pool below, it moves across the surface. This is usually what we can see in the form of whitewater, right? And what most people perceive as the risk or the feature to deal with. The water moves across the surface and hits an obstacle or an obstruction, and then it moves three ways. The ones that we can see are on the surface. It moves left down canyon in this example, or starts to circulate around to the right. Like water has to move somewhere, and it's the same amount of volume coming in that needs to be displaced. The circular motion to the right is what creates the trap pool. The third one that hits the wall is what is a little bit harder to see, and the majority of that water has to go down. Right? It can only lift up so much and be displaced left and right, and that water goes down into a circular motion. This is what we call recirculating hydraulics or whatnot. So this is how they're happening at an obstruction. The water that's on the surface sometimes will be referred to as a pillow, and if with lack of visibility on that, could mean that the rock is undercut. The next slide gives us a real-time video of we can actually see this. This is slightly high water descent in a canyon we do often here in Washington. And you can see the water coming down, and it's not really penetrating very deep. We see a lot of surface flow going into the obstruction across from it, the rock. It's kind of hard to say whether it's kind of undercut or not, but there is a little bit of pillow there, and you can definitely see the split of the water left and right. But some of that water, you have to know, is going down. So why does this matter? Well, when I need to make a decision based on what I see, here's kind of usually what happens. So we got this person here in the orange helmet about to come off rope. Decision's got to be made. So what can typically happen is that they're going to come off rope. They're going to get pushed in the current, kind of hit the wall, and more than likely end up in the right-hand side down in the pocket. So now they have a decision to get out of that pocket. Typically, new beginners or people with less experience, when they're coming out of this, they're going to try to approach it along the wall. So as they're approaching along the wall, they're stuck. They're going to get caught in that downward current, and then they're going to be fighting for an airway, and they're going to be fighting to stay on the surface rather than move across. Another typical path that maybe somebody has seen videos, or at least they're saying is like, hey, I want to cut across this current. They're just going to try to swim across the center. And this is what I call the perceived route as it's the least amount of risk. Like I don't see, like I don't know if there's an undercut there. I don't know what's going on with the pillow, so I'm afraid of that. And I definitely don't want to go and get hammered in the major flow of the waterfall because there's a lot of stuff there. So the easiest route appears to be right through the center. And what usually happens is they enter the center and they're going to hit that current, get pushed back into the wall, and end up back around in the trap pool where they're at. Where the more experienced route is, even in the river community, we refer to exiting the eddy up high. So a trap pool is nothing but an eddy. It's a surface current. We want to exit that as high as possible, meaning upriver or upstream. And in this case, is right there at the veil of the waterfall. It's also where the water is most aerated. So there's least amount of energy potentially in that spot. So a lot of times when I'm trying to escape this, like I'm just maybe just drop off the rope right there, slip in behind the veil, and I'm just going to try to get a hand out and try to grab some of that current that is moving out towards the cannoneer in the red jacket. Hardly any swimming at all. Just going to grab that water and go for it. Another cause that has causes a lot of potential entrapments of trap pools is boils. And this is where the water comes in and is maybe a little bit more concentrated and is in a sharper angle. So it's going down and it's hitting the water. Water itself is an obstacle. So it's going to get deflected and it's going to start coming back to the surface. And when it comes back to the surface, that's where you see the boil. And here's a good example of how it may not go favorably. Again, you can see the decision made here is to kind of tackle it right down the center. Yeah, right back to the rope. So on the next slide, we're going to break down this video into kind of the 3 steps. So the first thing, I love the jump. This is a great example of a good swiftwater entry, flat on the surface, but he's definitely got some good momentum here, but just doesn't have the distance. Like that boil is out pretty far. So go ahead and hit the next. So great momentum. Then he hits the boil and he's on the backside. So he's on the wrong side of it. As soon as he hits that water, momentum stops. And as soon as that momentum stops, you can try swimming as hard as you can. But if you don't already have the momentum and current of the water, you kind of end up right back at square one. So what's going to happen here? Well, you get a little message in your brain that says, follow the flow. So what does that look like? So rather than trying to, because either you're going to climb back up and jump in, but again, if you were just to hook, exiting that eddy high and hook and try to catch a lot of that faster moving water, which may be deeper, you might need to reach down and find some of that deeper current instead of the surface flow and try to ride that out through in order to escape the pool. So more times than not, the best, easiest escape route of a trap pool is upstream. I think it's getting as close to that feature of the waterfall as possible, and starting to understand the difference between what the actual risk and the perceived risk, or actual success versus perceived success in this example. So this is kind of wrapping it all up. So observe, take a look at the flow. Is this a trap that I can avoid? Maybe I don't even need to go in it. That would be the best plan. Where's the flow going and where's it going to take me out? So this is another thing to consider, is that if you're going to commit yourself to the flow and it's going into another hazard, that might not be where you want to be. So a trap pool in that case, kind of what we call the safe eddy rule, might be a cool place to hang out, assuming that you have the flotation to do so. So that's part of the prepare on this one. Will I float? What's the plan if things go wrong? Do my teammates know? That I discuss this, hey, I'm going to go down and hang out in a trap pool and suss things out. Check to see if there's any hazards, get a little bit better look down low, whatnot. That's what I'm going to do. And then based on what I'm going to do, I'm going to communicate that back up to the team and go from there. So it could be an, okay, I'm moving out, or hey, I'm coming back up the rope, or send somebody else down here, something like that. And then classic, go with the flow. The water is more powerful than you are, so use it to your advantage. You just got to maybe go deeper. I mentioned that once before, finding that deep water, finding that turtle water from Little Nemo, getting in it and just, whoa, and ride your way out. It's a lot easier than fighting it. Andrew loves that analogy. He's got a kid now, so he's gonna be watching it soon.
Didn't get that turtle water.
Get that
Um,
turtle.
so we're going to come to another situation here. So this is a story from High Falls. If you guys know where that is, it's in British Columbia. High Falls is kind of a classic high flow canyon there, just north of Squamish. So inside High Falls, there's this great double drop. Well, I wouldn't say great, but there's this double drop that's kind of spread apart. Neither of the waterfalls are very high, probably 15 feet or so, but they are kind of spread apart. And the problem is that there's only one anchor, so you have to use one rope to get down both drops. And so on this trip through, we had an inexperienced canyoneer going along with us. And when we got to this drop and I was looking at it, my spidey senses sort of went off and was like, "Ooh, this could be difficult for this person." And so I took a more experienced teammate, and as they were about halfway getting ready to go down the second drop, I said, "Hey, just come off the rope and wait there for a second." They were a bit confused with me, like, why stop my rappel? Like, just wait. And so they waited there. Then this inexperienced canyoneer stepped up and they started setting up their device and they put themselves into slow mode around both of the legs at the bottom and this full friction. And I said to them, I don't think you're going to want to do that. You should go into fast mode. And they said, well, I don't feel very confident, on these ropes and they're a little bit fast. And I just feel more comfortable if I was in slow mode to be able to control myself down. And sure enough, they went down. And as soon as they hit the first pool, they got stuck and they could not move along on the rope. And then suddenly that experienced canyoneer who was already stationed down was like, oh, hey, and grabbed them and pulled them out of that pool. And they continued descent. All was well. Um, so what is the problem, right? So coming back to that perceived versus actual risk, the perceived risk of that person was controlling themselves on the rappel. The actual risk was swimming while being attached to the rope. And so why is this a problem? Our descenders just simply aren't designed for us to be swimming on them. They're designed for us to be hanging on them. And so we are in this, as soon as you get into this situation, you're battling for friction here. Who's going to win over forces? And so I'm just going to give you a scenario here. We're going to take that same full friction. That's like 420 degrees of bend. If you take the coefficient of friction of about 0.6, which is what a carabiner is, rope ring through a carabiner. And then all we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit of rope downstream out of their descender. This is the tail. And we're going to add about a pound of force on the end of that rope. That pound of force translates to 400 newtons in slow mode. If you look over here at my swimming table, we're looking for something greater than 400 newtons. And the only place we can see that is really in the kind of this peak force down here. So, the only way to start moving is to swim really fast. And as soon as you swim fast, you already lose momentum. And the next thing you know, you're still stuck. So I know the experienced canyoneers that are sitting on this call are like, well, this is quite an easy one. You just pull some slack through your descender and then you start swimming and then you do it again. But why do you know that? It's because you've experienced this. You've swam on a rope before and you're like, wow, that was hard. I need to do something different. What about the people who have never done that? Yeah. And that is exactly the situation that I was facing that day. So what are some of our solutions? Don't do this if possible. That's number one. Yeah. Ideally, you don't swim on rope. This really only happens because the first descent team put in only one anchor, or there's some local ethics that says, hey, we should use less anchors, and so we're going to rappel across two things. But ideally, you should put an anchor at every drop. That's one way to mitigate it. Other way is, can you just go around it? Like, do you actually have to rappel and swim? Not all the time. Yeah. So if possible, you try to avoid swimming on rappel. So, okay, let me tell you another story. All right, this one's on a 45-degree slope. A lot of water going through there. You wanted to stay out of the water, but the terrain was very slippery. And so we had a teammate that they were the last person. They were cleaning the wrist, last person at risk. And as they were going down, they slipped and fell into the flow. They slid into that flow. And they continued their descent, and they ended up in this really turbulent pool, and they had a bag attached to them. And next thing you know, they were struggling to get air because they were just getting tossed around so much. The real problem was that their teammates were already down the next drop. So this person's now alone. Nobody's there to actually help them. Luckily, their teammates realized what was happening. One of them had great climbing skills, managed to climb back up, get to that pool, and pull them out. And that was, extremely traumatic for that person. Now, after that incident, the team we kind of got a talking to. One of our big issues, especially in recreational world, is we start to really get our blinders on and focus in on ourselves. And as a canyon, you really need to move as a unit, as a team. And there's a principle in the swiftwater world, the rafting, kayaking world of setting safety. And what does that actually mean is you have somebody that is going to be ready in case there's some sort of incident. And what that often looks like is sort of a bottom, middle, top. You have somebody at the bottom that's waiting at the bottom of that waterfall for them. You have somebody in the middle, that's usually the person that's rappelling. Yeah, that's the actual person going through. And then you have somebody at the top, at the anchor station. I'm going to call it the safety sandwich. Why are you doing this? You're doing this to anticipate the issues. And what's really most important is always wait for your teammate. Wait till they get off that rappel, swim across the pool, get out and stand up, and you say, great, now can you wait for the next person as I go to this next drop? Yeah. So this is we're talking about specifics here, but I think this is a really good time to move into rescue philosophy. So Brent?
Yep. So again, going back to, it's better to go with a little bit of philosophy and understanding rather than with rules and techniques. We will get into a couple of techniques, but one of the biggest ones that we bring into the canyoning world is this rescue hierarchy. And there's a lot of factors to this. So the first one is self-rescue. So it's the lowest risk to the team. Like if you have the ability to rescue yourself, it's also the fastest. I know that there's a problem quicker than anybody else. I don't need to wait for somebody to make a decision. I just kind of fix my own shit. But that requires personal skill and ability, which comes from practice, right? I have to be able to deal with these things. Maybe that's a little bit of preparation. What's my flotation look like? Moving down from there is indirect rescue. One of the most popular indirect rescues that we use in canyoning would be, releasable anchors. So you just lower from up above. Well, what if lowering up above is putting them into a more difficult situation down below, right? So it's lower risk to me as the rescuer, but maybe not lowest risk to the person that's on the rope. So it requires a little bit of pre-planning. I need to build a releasable system, but then I also need to evaluate if that's the right answer. It's the same thing in Swiftwater, is that maybe the indirect way of doing it isn't the fastest. So just like the self-rescue requires skill and practice, a little bit more skill and practice and a little bit more risk because now I'm involving two people, which involves more decision making. And the last one, the direct rescue. And the conundrum with this one is we often say that contact rescue saves lives. You'll hear that with Swiftwater courses that I've taken and some high-end instructors on the recreational side. When you see your buddy in a kayak go over or get in pinned, the faster I can make contact and maintain their airway increases the likeliness of survival and lower injury, right? So contact rescue saves lives, but at the same time, it is the highest risk to the rescuer. For me to go into the environment myself puts me at the greatest risk, especially if I haven't planned ahead. Planned ahead meaning, do I have enough flotation, not only for myself, but for another person? And it requires the highest level of skill and practice for the rescuer. Like I really need to know what I'm doing before I enter that environment to then pull another person. So one of the rescue sequences that has been around from the Swiftwater community for a long time. It's got some interesting background, like where it started and why, and who it applies to. And this has slowly been going away over the years because the application really doesn't always fit every situation all the time. And it's referred to as RETHROG, which stands for reach, throw, row, go. So this was a paddling thing. It was used in Swiftwater rescue when there was usually a paddle craft on scene that you could use, but we don't have that, right? So if I take away rowing, the only thing I got in the canyon environment is reach, throw, and go. That's it. So I'm down to three options. And that's what we kind of already talked about and kind of in line with self-rescue, indirect, and direct rescue. So moving into the next one, we're going to go into some tools that we use for this rescue. So we look at throw bags and rope toss. I put them both in the same category, but let's break it down with river tools versus canyon tools, meaning the rope is the primary difference. Is that in the river community, when I buy a throw bag, it's made out of highly floating material, polypropylene. The problem with polypropylene is it's not designed for rappelling. It's not designed for really anything else besides really floating well on the top of the surface of water. And when I say swift water, it's kind of a river environment, not the major boils and stuff that we could be talking about in a canyon. So even those environments, the rope may not stay on the surface. The other thing I want to look at is, why do I want to carry a special use item? So in a canyon, the length, can I rappel on it? And then the bag itself, does it have drainage? Some bags are designed for drainage, mesh. The rope dries really nicely. It's nice if I'm carrying that on my harness or in my pack. When I stand up out of the water dumps out. Some people like to have a bag that will hold a little bit more water because now I have a heavier object to throw. So I maybe can get more distance out of it, but there's a balance with that. Sometimes I refer to some bigger bags as shoulder dislocators. So, okay, well, maybe I can just use the rope. So bag versus rope. And this is a skill. If I learn how to throw rope coils and learn how to throw rope well with a lot of accuracy, I have more chances of repeatability. I can get more throws in. I'm not taking the time to restuff that bag. So you think about the bag, I get one shot with that bag, and then I'm throwing a rope. So practice and use rope tosses more than just the bag. So that's what I mean by more available. That, and it's like I can throw any rope if I get good at it. I can throw any rope I got. If it's 60 meters of rope, I can pull out maybe just 5 meters, give it a short little toss, right? I don't need to throw the whole bag of 60 meters and cause more problems. Um, Line of sight can be an issue. So sometimes these features, they go up canyon and around the corner. So if I can't see where I'm throwing, I definitely don't want to throw a whole bag of rope into that environment and just let it get dumped out and turbulent all over. So line of sight, I might have difficulty in judging the distance and pulling out enough rope. And it's more difficult throwing just a rope than a bag. So what does this all mean? Well, when I go to set that downstream safety, if the plan is I'm going to use a rope to throw for an indirect rescue, practice before the first person comes down. Figure out your plan. It's like, hey, is the bag going to work here? Maybe not. Maybe I should pull out some rope. Did I pull out enough rope? And here's a crazy idea I started doing is like, well, if I have a larger bag that floats, maybe I pull out enough rope, toss, get my length right, and then I tie that and secure the bag so the bag can't open. But now if I can throw that object in, now I have a larger mass that might stay on the surface that somebody can see and grab if they need to. It's kind of like the idea of throwing the life ring buoy. So going to the next one. So you maybe already heard me mention tools for rescue, flotation. So what we're using is the wetsuit vest, not the pack. So pack flotation is for the pack. It's not something is not a good use of tool. So that's something that I'm not going to use. But your wetsuit and vest are definitely the best tools to have and use with you. For an indirect ACU, I'm not going to take my flotation off, but direct rescue, that's really where it applies. If you look at that little background picture on the left there, there's a good example of a direct rescue that had flotation, but not enough. Highly aerated water, when you get another person clinging on, maintaining it every week kind of gets a little challenging. So, Andrew, you taking into techniques, or I keep rolling?
That's fine. I can go. So yeah, so well, when we talk about doing this kind of safety sandwich or whatnot, this downstream safety, this person that's at the bottom, right? And it's very standard in the river culture to have somebody that's waiting at the bottom of a rapid, and we need to do something similar in a canyon world. So as you can see in this drop, this is actually the exact same drop I was talking about that person got stuck in with the bag, and you can see them struggling in there. But there's somebody right above to help in case there is some sort of issue. And look at it. This is a hard place to get out of. This is a place that you need to be anticipating and waiting for your teammate. So, obviously they're self-rescuing themselves. It's great that they're getting that experience, but this is a great place to be sort of indirect, awesome. Direct, you're starting to get a little bit, you're adding more risk, but this could be possible here. So let's look at another video. This one's a tough one to watch. As you can see here, this person is struggling big time, right? Their teammate has come back for them. They keep going back in. A lot of things going on here. So things that we want to point out. This is a trap pull from a boil that's pushing him back in there. There is a lot of aeration, a lot of bubbles in the pool, so they're not floating well. And their teammates, this guy had to run back to get him. Even a second person had to run back. And if you see, that guy was trying to get himself out. So he was trying to self-rescue. He needed his teammates ultimately, and that led to this sort of indirect rescue, right? Or a direct rescue of somebody reaching out with themselves to actually try to get him. If they had maybe a small sling, they could have reached a little further, perhaps actually gotten that person out a little bit quicker. So we want to come back to this direct rescue. This is something we see too often, swimming with a rope. Now, swimming with a rope attached to you is extremely dangerous. Yeah, it is probably the most dangerous thing you can do. In the river world, there is a rescue PFD. It is specifically designed for this, and it's designed for this because you can pull the strap and actually release yourself from the rope. If you tie a figure eight and clip it into your harness, there is no ability to release that unless you cut that rope. So in the canyon world, we don't have these vests often. So what Brent has been experimenting with a lot, and I think is really good, is just swimming with that rope in your hand. 9 times out of 10, you can still swim, and you have enough strength to be able to hold on to that. So, looking at that rescue hierarchy, well, catch and hold could be for the rope getting thrown to you, right? For the indirect line way is perhaps you've set a line across the canyon so that when somebody gets to the pool, they can grab that and pull themselves out. But then if we can't do any of those things, then we're going to that direct level. And this is where contact swim, you're going to want to hold on to that rope with somebody on the other end that can pull you back, of course, and jump in and try to get this person and bring them out, right? But that is a last resort, right? So everything we've covered today is informational. This is informational training, what Brent and I are doing. We're helping you to start ask more questions about these things that you don't, maybe you're less familiar with or you want to learn more about. What I can say about the water world is there is no replacement for real world experience in water. You need to get in water and get pushed around and tossed everywhere to really begin to understand what is happening in these pools. Watching this video is not going to be enough. So since we're talking about safety, in this video, instruction is no different. Yeah, you need to protect yourself when you go out and seek instruction to learn more stuff. Protect yourself by collecting as much data as possible about the provider that's offering you this training. These things that are on the left should be standard for anybody that's out there working in the professional world. So just to kind of plug some stuff in the Pacific Northwest, Kraken Whitewater, that's Brent. Yeah. We have Wild Sky Adventure Guys with Sam. He's been doing lots of courses. Brent has been teaching a lot of them. That's a great way to get in-person stuff. We have Canyon, Colorado. That's not in the Pacific Northwest, but Caden that runs that is very experienced in whitewater canyoning. The Mountaineers runs a fantastic program up here in Seattle. Lots of whitewater training, often working with Kraken and Wild Sky and all these people kind of coming together. And then if you can't get to training and you want to just learn more, there is this resource that is my company, V7 Academy. It's designed for those people who can't afford to fly across the country or across the world, if you're from across the world, to come to these in-person trainings. But I really can't stress to you enough, water training is about getting that actual experience in it. Brent, would you like to close with anything extra, or do you want to?
No, I think you nailed it. Thanks for getting us kind of caught up back on track. I think maybe we just roll in. I see a couple of questions in the chat. If we just want to jump on those right away.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um,
Oh, you want to take that Nate's iPhone there? I think that's a great one for you. Can you see that?
oh, yep. So that one and the bottom one are both, yeah, asking questions about flotation. So I am a huge proponent of flotation. If you've seen videos of me or any pictures, I've been in a canyon one time without my vest and quickly regretted it. To that, I do wear more often a 4-3 seam sealed wetsuit. So understanding that the amount of flotation that is in a 2-piece 5 mil wetsuit versus what I wear versus a dry suit is significantly different. So you can't just say, oh, this vest is good for all the cases. Like it constantly change with whatever you're wearing for the environment. Impact vests do provide flotation. Here's the caveat. They're less than a Coast Guard approved life jacket or PFD. And that's because they don't meet the minimum pounds of flotation required by the Coast Guard. So they're kind of a happy medium. If the wetsuit is already providing me some flotation, maybe that impact vest gives me just what I need in a canyon without the excess bulk. They're designed, they fit really low profile. But if I wear that impact vest with a dry suit, it's not enough. Not going to cut it. So being able to change. So I've recently been using a hybrid, and there's a picture of somebody wearing one of these. Mustang makes one where it's a flotation from foam and air. So you can inflate it to get more flotation, but when you don't need that for lower flow canyons or whatnot, it deflates and lays really, really flat, really low profile. Like I can still see everything on my harness just fine. And I'm becoming a huge fan of those because now I can inflate it. I have one thing that I can wear and change it. And the joke is I'll look at something and I'll start inflating my vest just to watch other people start panicking. Like, oh yeah, you're gonna want some flotation for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I typically don't wear a PFD, but I am very conscious of how much I'm going to float. Like, I like having a thick wetsuit. If I was wearing a thin wetsuit, a 4-3, which is quite common out there, I would be thinking twice about some of the swims that I make. And I also have other things that may float with me. So, one of the things I carry all the time is, well, frequently we're doing first descents. I have a drill bag that's on me that has a ton of air in it, and it floats quite well. And I can't tell you how much of a hero I feel like just having that extra flotation. And I love Gurchin's comment right here on the video of direct rescue is a good example of why not wearing a white helmet in whitewater canyons. So, from back in my guiding days, sometimes we'd go into these canyons in quite high flow, and I can remember multiple times we had this slide that people would come down, and when they came to the surface, their head would not breach the surface, even though they were wearing a ton of neoprene and a PFD, because this company that I worked for did wear PFDs. All I could see was the top dome of their helmet moving across the pool to me, and it would get to me, and I'd pick them up and be like, okay, take a breath, like you're good again. But like it was amazing how much those bubbles in the water actually prevent your ability to get your head above the surface. And that's what you can't stress enough. When you're in that sort of situation, you need adequate flotation. What you might have got away with in low flow canyons is maybe not going to be possible in those higher flow canyons.
So waiting for now's a chance to start popping some more questions in. I'm going to go back to Brian S's question. I put together a pretty good article in Rope Wiki. There's a flotation where there was an international debate going on around for a long time, and it was always about PFD or no PFD. And I think Andrew and I are very much on the same page. It's about flotation. You need flotation, right? So times that I wouldn't wear, what's really nice with the vest or impact vest that I can remove easily is when I need to dive down and get something, right? Not a whitewater, not one that's like, oh, crap, somebody dropped something, or I just found some canyon booty and I'm going to swim down and get it. It's about 10 feet down. And either I need somebody to stand on my back to push me down, or I pop that vest off, go down with no problem. Andrew's got a pretty cool technique where it's more of an advanced technique where you can swim down along the bottom and pop up on the other side of a trap pool. That might be easier with more or less flotation, but there's several ways to tackle those things. But having variable flotation is definitely key.
Yeah, and yes, in general, the recommendations, some people say don't wear PFDs, but like flotation, and fit for purpose, right? Fit for what you're going to be doing in that canyon. Do you need to be wearing a PFD in that very low flow canyon? If you're a great swimmer, maybe not. But if you're in that low flow canyon, you're not a great swimmer, you better have some sort of extra flotation on. And then when you get in the higher flow, it's great to have that stuff.
Yeah, not all PFDs are the same. I see a lot of videos from other countries where it's raft companies that start getting into canyoning. So they're in customer PFDs, which is a high float. and they're one size fits all. So that's another thing is like having something that's form fitting is where a lot of the bad information has come from with people jumping with PFDs that don't fit properly, causing injury. So again, it's not about yes or no PFD, it's having the right flotation that's fitted for you and proper use and wear.
Hmm. So there's a great question in the end. That Zach asked, he said, in the last video, what would have been the best rescue option as opposed to just reaching out for a hand-to-hand rescue? Are there quick rescue tools or short rope type options that you'd use if this situation is anticipated? I really like that last word in there, the anticipated piece. So anybody that can read water could look at that particular pool and say that is a potentially very dangerous pool. There's a good chance that you can get pushed over to that side. And to give you a personal story, we had a situation where somebody was going to make a really quite scary swim. And again, Spidey senses going off like this person might not make it. And I wasn't close enough to really be able to do something about it, but there was somebody that was closer to that person who's about to make that swim. And they had a nice little canyon throw bag on them. And I'm over there waving, going, "Get your bag ready," like get that out. And they're going, what do you want me to do? And like, get the bag ready. Person swam, had a really heck of an incident. That person could not get their bag out fast enough to kind of throw to them. And, that situation could have been totally different with some anticipation, right? If you're anticipating that issue is going to happen, you can start to make a plan of what kind of tools you need. You don't necessarily need this little throw bag, but there's others, if you don't have that, what else is on your harness that you could use as some sort of extension just to reach out a little further? I think most of us have some slings on our harness. You can throw out a sling a little bit to reach them. Um, that hand-to-hand rescue, if you've got a good hold on that rock, I think you're probably sturdy enough to be able to grab somebody out. I think that would be perfectly adequate mostly on that situation. But really in that situation, you needed to just not send your team through that pool. That's a dangerous pool. Yeah. First person should have gone down, and then you guys should start figuring out how you're going to not let anybody else go through that again.
Yeah, I definitely, depending on the group and the team, probably would have had two people down there and set up for an indirect, direct rescue. Like I would want all the options down there to include an option for avoiding. Maybe that could have been a guideline, rappel pull, some other technique, rope technique to where it's like only one person needs to touch this feature today.
That's why we invented the guided rappel, everyone. That's part of it. Not to say that that's the only option. There are many other options that are probably safer than a guided rappel, but that is part of what that's about. When else would you use it other than to keep people from experiencing the same thing?
Uh, I'll
Accidentally
take,
raised my hand. You go ahead.
yes, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'll take the Nate's. Do you recommend advanced swiftwater training before swiftwater rescue? If so, any in advanced courses planned? So I just recently wrote an article about basic, intermediate, advanced, and the terminology. Advanced, so in the Swiftwater realm, you got to take a basic course or a Swiftwater course before you could take an advanced. And when we teach advanced courses in the Swiftwater rescue world, that's when we start bringing in technical rope work because usually people from the Swiftwater community aren't technical rope people. That's why the canyoning environment's kind of unique. We're both. So I would ask, and you feel free to reach out to me on the side. Like I would ask, what's your ultimate goal? Because if you take a river swiftwater course, there is a lot to be learned from just swimming in the environment, reading water, and just spending time doing a 3-day swiftwater course and learning some basic skills, and then figuring out what you're going to take and apply. You're going to be using a swiftwater throw bag. You're going to get a lot of rope toss practice, all those kind of things. And then you just take your canyon equipment and then practice the same thing. You will be required to wear a PFD or life jacket for those courses. It's an insurance thing. It's part of the culture. It's just you can't go in the river without one, right? So this is where with Wild Sky, Sam Keller, and myself, we've combined kind of this hybrid thing where We, in the past, have started like kind of a 1 day where Swiftwater, where you're wearing a PFD, and then we move into a canyon environment. When PFDs come off, it's like you need to start knowing the limitations of your gear and how to perform in that. And then we started tackling canyon specific problems like vertical foot entrapments in flow. Can't lower. It's a direct rescue. How do we tackle that problem? And then if the person's injured going down into a hydraulic, now how do you tackle that problem? Those are advanced courses where it's like simple things, but now they're stacked up and you need to be thinking several times in advance. So to answer your question, you need to be super strong in the fundamentals. And there's a term out there that unconscious competence. I don't need to be thinking about throwing a throwback. I just need to be able to do it on target on a regular basis. If I'm going to move into an advance, where now I'm going to have complicated scenarios.
I'm going to take Ira's question because I know it's going to pain you to say this one out loud.
Is it?
But the what is the
Oh,
his question is, what is canyoning PFD consensus globally? So yeah, in general, the consensus globally is no PFD, and the logic is that our wetsuits provide sufficient buoyancy to mitigate most of the issues that we're having. And I tend to agree when I wear a nice thick wetsuit. When I'm wearing a 654 most of the time, I float great. My shoulders are out of the water. But I would say that I see a lot of surf wetsuits here in the U.S. You don't see many surf wetsuits. There's many surf wetsuits in in these other countries that you're asking about. And those surf wetsuits generally do not have as much flotation, and you really notice the difference. Um, Let's see, what do we got next? Alex, do you have a favorite ascenders for getting up rope on flow? Yeah, none of them. No ascenders for going up a rope in the flow.
I
Um,
predicted that was your answer.
that's mean that like there's not a descender, there's not an ascender in this world. I mean, you can't even tell me get a Voldaton Trest that's releasable under load and start ascending up in the flow. It is so dangerous to ascend in the flow, everyone. You are much better off just leaving your rope behind, and that's why you should be carrying extra rope, a rescue rope. You should just continue down that canyon with your extra rope. That's why you brought it, and leave that one behind. You should not be trying to ascend in the flow. It is so dangerous and is very, very risky. There are techniques out there, but I would say they're um, they're techniques that are interesting to think about, but not really practical. Not in practice, it's you should just avoid it. Don't do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of other options that we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but again, should be talked about in a course rather than teaching, yep, this is how you ascend and float. Or like, well, was there any discussion about any options? Is there just an exit down and we can circle back up and drop in and get it from the top down? Or can I set up a bottom anchor, release? Like there's a lot of other ways to tackle that problem. And it's kind of crazy that a lot of people know the other solutions, but they just get taught, therefore they think, I got to ascend and flow. Just go back up the rope. GPS communication device that proves the most reliable regarding waterproofing. So I carry a Garmin InReach Mini and the same model that Jake Huddleston carries. And I know Jake for a long time used to just put his in the brain of his pack, not
Mm.
even his keg or anything like that. Just blew my mind. It's like, Jake, are you really? He's like, nah, if I need to get to it, it's there. And it's been working. I put mine in a very nice waterproof bag, and or a keg. You got to I think of it as that is a piece of emergency equipment. I do not want to anything go wrong with it. And it seems to be the most useful. There was an incident that Sam Kelly was just involved in Mallorca, and there was probably some people in this call that were involved on it where they had a different type of device, not to get in the weeds of devices, but it was a personal locator. And they opened it up, turned it on, hit the button, couldn't tell if it did anything. They're like, is it working? Had no idea. So Sam only waited, a minute, and he got his out. He hit the SOS on his inReach, which then of course messaged us, and I started getting calls like, "Hey, do you know what's going on with Sam? I got a phone call from Garmin." So yes, that does happen, and they seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with you, Brent. Like anything that says it's waterproof is not waterproof. You need to put it You need to treat everything that says waterproof that it's not, and put it in another waterproof, and maybe put that in another waterproof too. I think the in-reach marketing is great because anytime you walk down a trail, everybody's got it right here because they all want it to be in reach, so they could push it really quick. That's not really the reality of how emergencies unfold. Um, but talking about the personal locator beacon, I'm glad you brought that up because personal locator beacon is really good for precise pinpointing people when the rescuers get closer, right? Like helicopters that are equipped for this can be like, it's right there. That's where it is. Something that can happen with those Garmin inReaches, which a friend of mine here on this call has experienced. They pushed it and it said they were in the canyon next door. Yeah, and that's just because as those GPS signals bounce off the mountains and stuff, they're not always pinpointing you exactly where you are. They're very confused a little bit about where you are. So, going to the canyon next door would have been quite bad. But luckily, the communication, having that by communication, is helps sort it out to say, I'm not there, I'm here. I'm in this canyon, and I know I'm in this canyon. And then the rescuers were able to go to the right place. Yeah. Um,
We got Ken.
Gretchen,
Going
yes,
in the
thank
house.
you.
Asking what am what how I would answer that question is I love throwing a bag.
I
I
just do.
absolutely love throwing bags. Sometimes to the detriment of my bag, but that's not always possible. A lot of time, even in a guiding environment, it's like I'm not just hucking my bag. I'm carrying maybe the emergency kit or something like that. Um, Me personally, I will transfer that bag anytime I'm in flow, not always just because it's safer, but I'll enjoy the rappel more. Like if I got a bag hanging off my side, I'm
So
kicking around
true.
my feet, and it's just like, yeah, it's just aggravating to me. And if I got somebody down below, I can zip line it, I can come up with another line. If I can zip line it and get the pull side, if I'm the last person, get that pull side so I know it's good to go. To where now, as the last person, I'm going to rappel and just enjoy the flow.
Mm.
That's what I want to do. That's personally what I like doing. And I will hand that bag off as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm always trying to get rid of my bag. If I had my way, I would not have a bag at all. And as the canyon gets more complex, the bag management becomes so much more important, and it becomes really difficult. And talking about bags, and since I know Gertrude's asking about rappelling or jumping, I'll stay away from rappelling because I wasn't kind of outside the scope. But jumping, like I definitely take mine off. I find that the bag is just more surface area to come up and hit me in the head, and I've tweaked my neck quite a few times from that. But there is a great video actually that you guys should go check out. If you guys know who Akira Tanaka is, really world-class canyoner from Japan's done, the majority of the hardest canyons in the world. He put out this great video of himself. He just slides down this, kind of swift channel, and he disappears over there. And he's got this first-person GoPro, and he ends up when he drops off the end, he ends up in this, turbulent hydraulic. And he's wearing a bag, and he is just getting destroyed in there for ages, And finally, he gets away from his bag and is able to like somehow swim away. But you'll see him. He said, obviously, swimming with bags is extremely dangerous. I just proved it again, doing this. And I think it's a really powerful video to watch. But in general, like guys, don't swim with your bag when it's a make or break move.
What if on the positive side of how I will use a bag to my advantage, again, in my hand, in flotation and water, is if I you can use it to escape trap pools, all kinds of stuff. If I can get that bag tossed over the current, into the current, there's a technique that's sometimes referred to as the bag sail. Just let it pull you and away you go. Just kind of Superman your way out of there. It's a great use of a bag not connected to me. And if it goes wrong, if it like starts to get into that suction zone, because I was trying to use it to pull myself up and out, I got to let it go. So there better not be anything of value like the first aid and inReach in that bag, if that's what you're using it for.
Yeah. I love your comment here, Gretchen, about the release system on your backpack. If you guys don't know what those little buckles for on your backpack are, that's what they're for. Yeah, getting away from them. I've even seen them used in dry canyons. Somebody got wedged in a really tight spot with their bag, and they're like, "Oh crap!" and they unbuckled themselves and got out. But that's what they're for, to get away from your bag. Um, Lisa asked what happened to Luca when he drowned. Lisa, there's great analysis out there done from I think American Whitewater did a full analysis of his accident. What I can say in relation to this talk is while Luca wasn't performing a rescue, the equivalent of what how he was attached to the rope would be the equivalent of a direct rescue, like swimming while attached to the rope. And unfortunately, that rope was very tied in a knot and attached to him. So I would encourage you to read that. It is a great example of why we should not swim with a rope attached to us. It's a really tragic example. And yeah, unfortunately, that's how that situation ended up. Let's see. Got some people making some nice recommendations about how to waterproof stuff. Definitely all about bag on bag on bag. As a desert canyoner, got a new one from T. Carlisle here. I know moving water hazards. How do you get beginners or those transferring over to aquatic canyons to do so safely? And what do you want us in the desert community to better understand besides everything you covered?
You got
Great.
it.
Okay. So the transfer over to aquatic canyons, there are actually dedicated courses for this. I believe Wild Sky does this transition course from Southwest to PNW type style canyons or water-filled canyons. I definitely encourage that. There's no substitute for experience of being in the water. So, that's the best thing you can do. But if you're going to go into these canyons, what I do recommend is you start small. And choose canyons with low flow. And so, we in the Pacific Northwest, we specifically use the European rating system with the A ratings. We don't use the Class C ratings. We use these A ratings, and they're numbered sequentially from 1 to 7. For really where you need to be to not really have any risk besides risk beyond swimming like a calm pool is about A2. A3 again is not supposed to really trap you, but it does begin to start showing you what those can happen. But as soon as you get into A4 or above, you better have some skilled experience. And the thing that I always say is, as the canyon starts to get harder, and it really gets harder as you add more water, it's less about rappelling, it's more about water. You need to be super precise. So even when you're going that really benign A2 canyon, you need to practice just like you're doing an A6 canyon. You need to be very precise with your rope. You need to manage your packs appropriately. You need to do all those things because all those habits will eventually transfer as you move up to your next level. But start small. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say um, flotation would be the most important thing, and then removing yourself from your pack. I think that is the thing that I see culturally coming from the Southwest. People are just so used to cleaning their pack, they kind of even forget it's there. It's like so. Those would be my two biggest takeaways. Check your flotation because a lot of times they're even wearing 2, 3 very lightweight wetsuits because it's so warm down there. But flotation, get rid, don't be connected to the pack anytime you go in the water.
Um, Somebody's asked about their favorite descender for canyoneering in Class C. Um, all canyon specific descenders, that's what I'm going to say, are sufficient for Class C swiftwater canyoning. What is not, I guess let me back up. We all know that climbers use ATCs to rappel with, or maybe a gree. And when you look at the canyoning world, you're like, why is everything this kind of figure eight style device? And that's from trial and error. Yeah. Luckily, the Europeans did this for us, and they figured out pretty quickly that having a kind of tubular device with kind of a small opening is a really bad idea because things don't pass. Anything that's on that rope is less likely to pass through that narrow constriction on the tubular device. Things like a knot in the rope, that's an obvious one. A less obvious one is I'm sure you guys all have these great American ropes with a nice big plastic piece on the very tip of your rope that is glued on there. That thing loves to get stuck in descenders. And then where is that? That's right at the bottom of the waterfall where you're getting the majority of the flow slamming on you, in this turbulent waterfall, and your descender is caught by this little plastic piece. And that happens very easily with an ATC. So having a Canyon style descender, these eights, that bigger opening, you're more likely for it to come out. Yeah. And that is specifically why our Canyon descenders are sort of designed the way they are these days.
For me, the question was, what's my favorite?
Yeah.
It is kind of the one that I currently have. Depends on the road.
Yeah, just
I use a lot of different ones just for sheer, we'll call it for science. Just because I like shiny things. But no, I would say it's more your favorite descender is more like, well, what's your favorite brand of running shoe? People like Nikes, like Adidas, like New Balance.
good analogy.
What's your foot? It's like, what are you doing?
Good
So a lot of
analogy.
times when I'm teaching new people, I'll bring out a plethora. Like, here, try this, try this, try this. Here's it. The nice thing is they all kind of set up and are used the same fundamentally with friction settings. But some people are like, no, I can't seem to find that one. And I'm like, I love that one, and they don't like it or whatever.
Yeah, and if you guys can see from Brent's background, you should not ask him what his favorite descender is because look how many are on his wall. It's it's got them all. It's got a problem.
I,
He's Gertchen's favorite customer.
yeah.
Um, all right, I think we're out of questions. Yes, again, get out there and learn Whitewater. Get out and take a qualified course. Get out there and start playing in it. And you can go to a normal Swiftwater course too to just get your feet wet. But I do recommend eventually looking for that canyon specific Whitewater course because there are some real differences out there. All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming back and having this presentation. I love the diagrams. The pictures were so beautiful. What a great treat for a January cold for all of us to see some beautiful pictures and great information. Thank you so much. Again, these guys came just to give us this information in their own time, so it's super appreciated. During the presentation, we already received some donations. We sold some shirts, and it's super awesome to see that. For example, last year in Moab, the land managers needed, they were having a problem with graffiti, so we were able to buy every ammo can they needed and the supplies to put trail registers at the trailhead. And when you go to Sand Threats Campground in Hanksville, Utah, you'll see signs that the CAC was able to completely fund and help the land managers with. So that's what's really awesome about your donations. They go right to helping exactly where they're needed. So thank you for joining us. This will be on YouTube in the next day or two. And we look forward to the next one. We have some really great presentations over the next few months from the science of flash floods, what should we be carrying in our emergency kit, all these great presentations. So stay tuned, subscribe to our YouTube, join us, and we'll be seeing you around. Thank you for coming and really much appreciated.